You know that feeling. Someone in your group chat drops a screenshot, up 40% this month. And for about 10 seconds you feel like the single dumbest person alive for not being in it. That exact feeling got aimed at one specific man in December of 1999. He was 69 years old. His company had just closed out its worst year in 3 decades, down 23%, while the market roaring around him was up 18%. And then the most respected investment magazine in the country put him on the cover. One message. 3 words. He's done. Too slow, too old. Doesn't understand the new economy everybody else was getting rich on. Less than 3 years later, that new economy had lost 78% of its value. Trillions gone. And the man they mocked had spent the entire bubble doing exactly one thing. Saying no. His name is Warren Buffett. He just walked away, after 60 years running the same company. And the rule that made him look like a fossil in 1999 is sitting untouched inside your brokerage app right now. It's the one thing that would have kept you out of every crash since. And here's what nobody tells you about it. It has almost nothing to do with picking stocks. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what it is, and why it's so hard to actually use. Because he didn't stop understanding the market. He just refused to stop checking the price tag. Buffett has a picture he uses for this, and it's the one I want you to carry the whole way through. Picture a bridge. An engineer builds it to hold 30,000 pounds. But the heaviest truck he'll ever send across weighs 10,000. That gap, that huge, deliberate, boring gap between what it can take and what you'll ever ask of it. That's the whole thing. In the financial world, almost nobody builds that gap. They drive the 10,000-pound truck across the bridge rated for exactly 10,001. And then they're shocked when it goes down. Everything Buffett did for 60 years lives inside that gap. Hold onto the bridge. So here's the plan. I'm going to walk you through the 3 rules underneath that entire career. Not the folksy quotes on the coffee mugs, the actual mechanics. I read the shareholder letters so you don't have to. And I want to be clear about what this is. This isn't stock advice. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm showing you the thinking that survived 2 of the biggest manias in modern history, so you can recognize the next one from the inside. If that's the kind of thing you want more of, the subscribe button is right there. It genuinely helps. Let's get into it. Start with the first rule, because it rewires how you see the number on your screen. Here's the trap you're already in and you don't feel it. You open the app. The number is red, down 3%. And instantly, quietly, your gut reads that red number as information. As if the market just told you something true about what you own. Didn't. It told you what a mood was willing to pay this second. Those are not the same thing. And the entire game is learning to feel the difference. Buffett got this from his teacher, a man named Benjamin Graham, in a 1949 book. Buffett read it when he was 19 years old. Graham gave the market a character. He called him Mr. Market. Imagine you own half of a small business. Your partner is a guy named Mr. Market, and he has a condition. Every single morning he shows up at your door and shouts a price. Some mornings he's euphoric and offers you a fortune for your half. Some mornings he's terrified and begs you to sell him yours for pennies. Here's the thing. He doesn't mind if you ignore him. He'll be back tomorrow with a completely different number. And the number has nothing to do with how the business actually did that day. The business is the same. Only his mood changed. Graham's point lands like a hammer. Mr. Market is there to serve you, not to instruct you. His price is an offer you can take or leave, never a fact you have to believe. He's a servant, not an oracle. The catastrophe happens the moment you flip those roles. You start letting his daily mood tell you what your own holdings are worth. Now watch what your brain does instead. When his price is high and climbing, you don't feel served. You feel late. You feel like everyone knows something you don't. So you buy from him at his happiest, most expensive moment. And when his price is low and falling, you don't feel offered a discount. You feel scared. So you sell to him at his most panicked, cheapest moment. Bought high, sold low, not because you're stupid, but because you treated his mood as a message. Researchers who study this have a dry name for what it costs. There's a firm called Dalbar. It has tracked how the average investor actually does versus the funds they're actually in for over 30 years. Year after year, the average person earns less than the very thing they're invested in. Same fund. Worse result. The gap is the mood. That's not a statistic. That's the person 2 seats over from you at work, who bought crypto the week it peaked and sold the week it bottomed, and can't understand how they lost money on the same asset that made someone else rich. You want a modern Mr. Market? Look at ARKK, Cathie Wood's flagship innovation fund. In 2020, it more than doubled. Everybody piled in near the top. Then it fell 23% in 2021, and another 67% in 2022. The people who bought the mood at its loudest took the worst of it. So the first rule is almost insultingly simple, and almost nobody does it. The price on your screen is Mr. Market talking. He is having a feeling. You do not have to have it with him. Okay. Second rule. And this one got Buffett publicly humiliated, so pay attention, because the humiliation is the whole lesson. Feel this first. You're scrolling. Everyone's talking about some company, some sector, some coin. You don't actually understand what it does. Not really. But the line goes up, and the fear of missing it gets louder than the fact that you can't explain it. So you buy the thing you can't explain. Buffett has a wall around that impulse, and he built it on purpose. He calls it the circle of competence. And the rule is not be smart about everything. The rule is the opposite. Know exactly where the edge of your understanding is, and refuse to invest $1 past it. He said the size of your circle doesn't matter at all. A small circle is fine. What's fatal is not knowing where its edge is. Because the moment you don't know you're outside your circle, you'll mistake a lucky guess for a skill. Now, here's where it cost him in public. For decades, Buffett would not touch technology stocks. Wouldn't buy them. His reason was flat and unglamorous. He couldn't predict which of them would still be winning in 10 years. So it sat outside his circle, and outside the circle he does not go. In the late 90s, that looked like the dumbest position on earth. December 1999. The dot-com bubble is screaming. Kids are quitting jobs to day trade. Companies with no profit are worth more than companies with 50 years of earnings. And Buffett is just sitting there, not participating. So Barron's, one of the most respected financial magazines, runs a cover story. The title is a taunt. What's wrong, Warren? The argument was simple and, at the time, convincing. His stock had just dropped 23% in a year the market rose 18. He was 69. He didn't get the internet. The world had moved on and the old man hadn't. Maybe they suggested he'd finally lost it. And you have to sit inside that moment to get it. He didn't secretly know he'd be proven right in a year. He didn't know when. He just knew the tech companies were outside his circle. And he would rather look like a fool for staying out than blow up for going in. That is a very specific kind of discipline, and it feels terrible in real time. Here's why your brain fights it so hard. Humans read, everyone is doing this and getting rich as a safety signal, not a danger sign. The herd feels safe. Standing outside it, watching it stampede toward money, feels insane. Buffett's circle is a wall against that feeling. So how does it show up in your real life? It's the Tuesday night you almost put a month's rent into a token. Because a stranger with a nice chart said it was going to 10x. And some small voice said you don't actually understand what this is. The circle of competence is you listening to that voice instead of the chart. Hold that Barron's cover in your head. We're coming back to it. What happened over the next few years is the whole reason this video exists. Third rule. This is the bridge. This is the 30,000-pound bridge you're still holding from the start. The idea is called margin of safety. Buffett has said it might be the 3 most important words in all of investing. It's plain. Only buy something for meaningfully less than you think it's worth. Leave a gap, cushion, room to be wrong. Because here's the part people skip. You will be wrong. Not might be, will be. Your estimate of what a thing is worth is a guess dressed up in math. The margin of safety is the admission, built into the price you pay, that your guess could be off. And you still want to survive it. Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, put the contrast perfectly. In engineering, people build in a huge margin of safety as a matter of course. In the financial world, people don't give a damn about safety. They calculate the exact load and drive the exact truck. And then they act surprised on the day the truck is a little heavier than they planned. Think about why the gap has to be there. Value isn't a fact you can look up. When Buffett estimates what a business is worth, he's guessing about cash the company will produce years into the future. And the future does not cooperate. Recessions arrive. Competitors show up. Management makes mistakes. So the gap isn't pessimism. It's just honesty about how much you don't know, converted into a number. He said it plainly. If a stock is worth only a little more than its price, he's not interested. The whole appeal is buying $1 of value for 60 cents. So even if he's wrong about the dollar, he doesn't lose his shirt. Notice how different that is from how a normal person buys. A normal person buys because the line is going up and they're afraid of missing it. There is zero margin of safety in it's going up. That's the opposite of a cushion. That's paying extra for excitement. Let me make the cost concrete, and I'll show my numbers. Take that Dalbar gap. Say the mood chaser earns around 6.8% a year over 30 years. And the plain market they sat inside earned closer to 9.5%. Start both with $100,000. Same market, same 30 years. The mood chaser at 6.8% ends with about $720,000, which sounds like plenty, right up until you see the other number. The one who held the boring thing and left the mood completely alone. At 9.5%, ends with just over 1.5 million. Same start, same market, same decades, and one of them has over $850,000 more than the other. That's not a rounding error, that's a house. That's a retirement. That's the difference, and it came from a gap of under 3 percentage points a year that felt like nothing along the way. And here's the part that should really land. The difference between them is not intelligence, not access, not some secret deal. They were in the same fund. The one who ended poorer just kept reacting, buying when it felt safe, selling when it felt scary. That small yearly gap was the cost of the mood, charged annually, for 30 years. You might be thinking, fine, but Buffett is a genius, I'll never value companies like he does. And you're right. That's not the point. You don't need his circle. You need to know you have one. You don't need to price a business to the dollar. You need to refuse to pay any price just because the number is going up. Because that's the whole thing restated. He didn't stop understanding the market. He just refused to stop checking the price tag. So let's put a real number on what this discipline is worth, over a life. Not a metaphor this time. The actual scoreboard. When Buffett finally stepped down as CEO at the very end of 2025, after 60 years, the number was public and audited. Over that stretch running Berkshire Hathaway, the company returned an average of just under 20% a year. The broad market, the thing anyone could have simply bought and held, returned around 10.5 over the same span. 20 versus 10.5. Your brain reads that as about double, and your brain is very, very wrong. This is the thing compounding does that nobody's intuition survives. A gap of 9 or 10% a year, run for 6 decades, is not double. It is thousands of times over. It's the reason a single share of his company costs more than most people's houses, one share. That's what the gap between twice as good and compounded for 60 years actually looks like. And notice what did not produce that number. It wasn't speed. He was famously, almost proudly slow. He would go years holding cash while everyone else got rich around him. It wasn't being early to every trend. He missed plenty of them and said so out loud. It wasn't some secret Rolodex of contacts. It was 3 boring rules applied without flinching for 60 years. Mostly by refusing to do the exciting thing at the exact moment it felt most urgent to do it. Now hold that against the average person because this is the gut punch. In that same market, over those same decades, the average investor kept earning less than the very funds they were invested in. Read that again. Not less than some genius, less than the fund sitting in their own account. They found a way to lose money on the thing that was making money, purely through timing. Buying the highs, selling the lows, reacting to Mr. Market's mood every single time. Same market, same math, same information, available to everyone with a phone. The gap was never information. The gap was discipline. That's the entire ballgame. And it's why this is a psychology video and not a stock-picking one. I keep coming back to that 19-year-old, so let me tell you the arc. Because it's the spine of everything I just said. 1949. A kid at the University of Nebraska picks up Benjamin Graham's book. The same one with Mr. Market in it. And here's the detail people skip. This kid was not a natural. He had already read every investing book he could find. He tried the charts, tried the tips, and by his own account none of it worked. He couldn't make money in stocks. He was kind of lost. Then he read this one book, and he said it changed his entire view of investing in a single shot. Not tuned it, changed it. The idea that flipped the switch was almost embarrassingly simple. Stop staring at the squiggle on the chart. Start thinking of a stock as owning a piece of an actual business with actual earnings, run by actual people. Once he saw a share that way, the mood on the screen stopped being a command and became just noise. That's the seed of the entire 60 years. Own the business, ignore the mood, demand the gap. Everything the man ever did after that is a footnote to a book he read at 19. Which means the single best investor in modern history built his whole method out of reading. Not a secret, not access, a paperback. Hold that thought because it matters for you. Now jump 50 years. That kid is 69, running one of the most successful companies in history, and the world has decided he's finished. Barron's cover. What's wrong, Warren? Down 23% while the market's up 18. Every talking head has a version of the same take. The game changed and the old man didn't. And here's the part one need you to really feel, because it's the hardest part of the whole story. He couldn't prove them wrong yet. There was no date on the calendar telling him the bubble would pop next spring. For all he knew in that moment, the doubters were right and he'd spend his last decade as a punchline. He just had his 3 rules. And they said the whole thing was outside his circle and priced with 0 margin of safety. So he stayed out. And then he ate 2 full years of public ridicule for it. In the most respected pages in finance at 69 years old, with his life's reputation on the line. Sit in that for a second because you feel a smaller version of it every week. Watching the herd run toward money you decided not to chase is genuinely painful. It doesn't feel wise. It feels like being left behind. Getting called outdated for a couple of years is the price of being right for 20. And almost nobody is willing to pay it. Because the 2 years come first, and they hurt, and the 20 years are invisible from where you're standing. Then the truck hit the bridge. Starting in March of 2000, the Nasdaq, home of those can't-lose internet stocks, began to fall. And it didn't dip. It didn't correct. It collapsed over the next 2.5 years. By the bottom, it had lost 78% of its value. 78%. The companies people mocked Buffett for refusing to buy were, a great many of them, worth exactly nothing. The famous ones, the ones with the Super Bowl ads, gone. And in the wreckage that followed, while the bubble kept unwinding for years, the washed-up old man's boring company just kept climbing. The bridge held. The trucks that ignored the rating went into the river. Here's the punchline that should stop you cold. A skeptical piece questioning him again ran 20 years later in 2019. Same doubt, 2 decades on. Same doubt. Same, the world moved on. And Buffett just kept doing the same 3 things. Until, at the end of 2025, he handed the company to his successor on his own terms at 95. One of the richest people who has ever lived. He got called a fossil twice across 3 different decades. By different people in different manias, all certain that this time the rules were obsolete. And the rules were never obsolete. The people were just excited. Now, let me argue against myself for a second. Because you should be skeptical of anyone selling one man as a saint. First, yes, Buffett has been wrong, and not rarely. He missed a whole generation of great technology companies by keeping that circle tight. For years, sticking to his rules meant sitting out some of the best performing stocks in history. There's an alternate universe where a bolder version of him did even better. Staying inside your competence has a real, recurring cost. You will watch things you didn't buy go straight to the moon, and it will sting every time. No amount of discipline makes that feeling go away. The rules don't promise you catch every winner. They promise you survive every loser. Those are very different guarantees. And it's worth being honest about which one you're getting. Second, his exact method is not something most people should copy. Valuing entire businesses by hand from their financial statements takes enormous time, skill, and temperament. And most people who try it just end up stock picking badly with extra steps. If you take one thing from this video, do not take go become a stock picker. That's the opposite of the lesson, and it's the exact trap that gets people hurt. And third, the honest one. The boring version of these rules, for a normal person, mostly looks like buying a broad, low-cost index fund, and then leaving it completely alone through every panic and every mania. That's it. That's the whole application for 90% of people. It is deeply unsexy, and that's exactly why it works. The excitement is the enemy. So no, this isn't be Warren Buffett. You can't and you shouldn't try. It's steal the 3 habits and ignore the stock picking entirely. So what do you actually do with this on a Tuesday? 3 things. 1 per rule. 1. The Mr. Market rule. When you open the app and the number is red and your stomach drops, say the actual sentence out loud. That's a mood, not a message. You don't have to do anything. Most of the damage in investing comes from doing something in response to a feeling. The red number is an offer, and you're allowed to decline it by simply closing the app. 2. The circle rule. Before you put money into anything, explain in 1 plain sentence how it actually makes money. Not the ticker, not the vibe, the business. If you can't finish the sentence, that's not a reason to research harder in the moment. It's a sign you're standing outside your circle, and the move is to not step over the line. 3. The margin of safety rule. Never buy something for the single reason that it's going up. It's up is not a thesis. It's up is the feeling wearing a costume. Build in the gap instead. And here's the good news, for a normal person that gap isn't complicated math. It's mostly just time and boredom. Money you genuinely won't touch for 10 years or more, in something broad and cheap, held flat through every crash and every mania. That's your 30,000-pound bridge. A long time horizon plus a refusal to react is the entire margin of safety a regular person needs. And it's available to you today for free with no genius required. The only thing standing between you and it is the urge to do something when the number moves. So let's close the loop we opened. December 1999. A magazine cover calls a 69-year-old man finished for refusing to buy into the most exciting thing in the world. Less than 3 years later, that exciting thing has erased 78% of its value. And the man is quietly, boringly, still standing, the way he'd stand for another 25 years. He didn't have better information than the people who mocked him. He didn't move faster. He wasn't smarter about the internet. He'd have told you himself he didn't understand it, and that was the entire point. He just had 3 rules he refused to break at the exact moments breaking them felt smartest. Treat the price on your screen as a mood, not a fact. Stay inside what you actually understand. And never ever pay full price for a feeling. He didn't stop understanding the market. He just refused to stop checking the price tag. The next time your group chat lights up with a screenshot and that 10 seconds of feeling like the dumbest person alive hits, remember there was a man they put on a magazine cover for feeling exactly that and doing nothing about it. And he was right. Twice. Across 3 decades. That feeling in your chest isn't information. It never was. It's just Mr. Market having a mood at your door. You can let him come back tomorrow. If this rewired how you see that number on your screen even a little, the subscribe button is how you get the next one. I'll see you there.